There was something intoxicating about the way she looked at me under dim museum lights, the way her fingers traced the edges of a broken locket, the way her lips parted in wonder at the displays of forgotten love. The museum was exclusive, whispered about in obscure forums, hidden behind a rusted gate in a town that barely existed on maps. It had no official name, only an invitation, a slip of parchment sealed in wax, promising an experience unlike any other. Inside, glass cases stretched endlessly, displaying relics from failed relationships, wilted bouquets that never made it to the altar, rings abandoned before vows could be spoken, handwritten letters soaked in regret. The air was thick with dust and something else, something heavier. It clung to my skin, settled in my lungs. She grinned as she pulled me deeper into the labyrinth of sorrow. I followed, bewitched. A music box sat open, its delicate tune fractured, looping a wailing sound that wasn't quite music. A veil hung in midair, untouched by any string or support. A wedding dress stood upright, filled with something unseen, its lace trembling as if remembering a last embrace. I felt them before I saw them. A whisper of movement in the glass. A reflection that wasn't mine. A pair of eyeglasses cracked in half rested on a velvet pillow. As I leaned in, a shadow flickered behind the glass, something hunched and breathing, something I swore hadn't been there before. The light overhead buzzed. The room contracted, like the museum itself had inhaled. She moved to another display, fascinated. A withered corsage crumbled under her breath. The frame of a wedding invitation warped inwards, the ink inside bleeding. I turned, heart thundering. The music box had stopped. The veil was gone. The dress had shifted. The artifacts were alive. The first scream wasn't mine. A shriek, thin and brittle like tearing lace, echoed through the halls. I spun to find her clutching her wrist, eyes wide. A black mark curled around her skin like an ink stain. It spread, the tendrils of forgotten sorrow crawling up her arm, embedding into her veins. The glass cases rattled. The whispering grew louder, the voices of the past clawing their way back into existence. The corsage pulsed, a heartbeat in decay. I grabbed her hand and ran. The museum shifted as we moved. The walls twisted, corridors expanding, swallowing us in their labyrinth. Paintings bled fresh tears, lips whispering names that had long been abandoned. The floor cracked open like a wound, black tendrils writhing beneath. A rusted engagement ring rolled into our path. The air around it warped, the shadow of a man looming tall and skeletal, his fingers outstretched, bones clicking like a lover knocking at a locked door. We ducked into another room. A collection of stuffed animals lined the shelves, stitched with red thread. Their button eyes swiveled toward us, tiny mouths moving in unison. Their seams tore open. They bled. Her breath hitched, her veins darkening, memories not her own, sinking into her flesh. I could see it in her eyes, fragments of lovers long dead playing behind her gaze. A typewriter clacked with no fingers to press its keys. I read the words as they formed. You are part of the collection now. The cases shattered. They spilled their contents onto the floor. Letters unfolded, dolls sat upright, broken jewelry snapped back together, and the shadows followed, gnarled and clawing, dragging themselves from the remnants of lost love. A bouquet of dried roses unfurled, revealing a skeletal hand clutching the stems. A torn wedding invitation whispered, ink reforming to spell our names. The past wanted to claim us. She stumbled, her nails dug into my wrist, her pupils blown wide. I held her tight. The museum moaned. The shadows surged. A door, one we hadn't seen before, swung open at the end of the corridor. Beyond it, the night stretched endlessly, the city lights a distant promise of reality. We ran. Hands, spectral and skeletal, clawed at our backs. A veil twisted itself into a noose, missing us by inches. The floor yawned open, black ink pooling at the edges, reaching for our ankles. The museum shrieked. We dived through the door. Darkness swallowed everything behind us. Silence. We landed on pavement, gasping, our hands clasped together, our bodies whole. The museum was gone. No rusted gate, no building, just an empty lot bathed in flickering streetlights. She looked at her wrist. The black mark had faded. I reached into my pocket. A single artifact remained. A rusted ring, still warm. The museum hadn't forgotten us. It never would.